Good evening. Did you hear about the one night of broken glass that happened years ago? Wait, hold on a second. Let me find out when this happened. First of all, let's see. Here's Senator James Lankford. I'm grateful to uphold this commitment with Senator Jackie Rosen on our bipartisan task force for combating anti-Semitism. Never again can't just be a hashtag. We must do the hard work of educating and equipping each other to actively condemn and reject anti Semitism because of the night of broken glass, because it's the anniversary week of Kristallnacht, which is this one night, some Germans broke some windows that belonged to Jewish people, which is wrong. You shouldn't do that. I'm not saying you should do that. I don't think you should. I think that's nobody wants their windows smashed, right? That's terrible. It's terrible. Well, just the thing about it is how can you have the whole government organized around fighting anti-Semitism and talking about one night of broken glass? After I've just watched American cities being burned and looted and people being murdered by these same people that are complaining about this one night of broken glass. People like George Soros, who's sponsoring it. Now, I'm not like okay. Some Germans went and broke some Jewish windows in retaliation to what was it? They were putting a boycott on German goods in New York, and so then some Germans went out in the street and smashed some Jewish windows in Germany. I don't know what city it is. I don't know a lot about that. I don't know a lot about Kristallnacht. I know it happened, and I think that's bad. I think it's bad to do that. It's bad to terrorize people with violence, and so especially if they're just running a store, right? Now, but what I'm saying is how is it that we're going to be lectured about anti-Semitism by the whole structure of the government? Okay, because it's not just him. Who else is doing this? Mike Pompeo had this on his Twitter feed. Let me see if I can find it. First, I'm going to send my reply to Senator James Lankford, and my reply to him is anti-Semitism. Jackie Rosen is a member of the party that just spent the last several months burning down American cities for George Soros, with a picture of George Soros with a car burning behind him. I'm going to send that. Okay, now let's see if I can find. Oh, here's Senator James Lankford. He's from Oklahoma. He just endorsed Joe Biden as the president. Joe Biden, who's the leader of Antifa, the guy who led the party that just burned down cities all across America, set up Maoist checkpoints, shot people for not saying Black Lives Matter, like that young girl that was 24 or 25 years old. The little 5-year-old boy that was shot in the head. You know, the police officer, Dorn, who was killed, was a black man. He was shot. So people are being murdered. You've got Maoist checkpoints being set up by the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party's rioting, burning, looting, smashing windows, burning people's businesses down, terrorizing everyone across the whole country. And Joe Biden is the leader of this political party doing this, the Democrat Party. And the same guy who's complaining about anti-Semitism 82 years ago just endorsed Joe Biden as our fake unelected dictator. So here's what Senator James Lankford says. 82 years ago, Nazi soldiers destroyed thousands of Jewish businesses, schools, and synagogues. This hate began one of the darkest periods in the history of the world. We must not forget the dangers of anti-Semitism and must remain committed to combating and ending it when it appears. So he's not really worried about rioting and looting and smashing here in America. He's worried about what happened 82 years ago and making sure that Jews are not subjected to what we're being subjected to right now here in America, all across the country. We're being subjected to what he's concerned about, something that happened 82 years ago. Now, who's subjecting us to this terrorism today? Well, George Soros. I mean, he is Jewish. And I'm not saying that Jews are behind the Black Lives Matter, although the Anti-Defamation League. I would say that there are some Jews that support it. Any Jews in the Democrat Party likely support it, most of them. Jews in the Republican Party, I don't see them supporting it. So there you go. I'm not saying it's all Jews. In fact, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of Jews who are disturbed by this crazy stuff. But it's true that George Soros is Jewish, and there's a lot of Jews in the Democrat Party that are right in there with Black Lives Matter. They're supporting it. They're promoting it. I would say, namely, the Anti-Defamation League on their website does endorse Black Lives Matter, and George Soros and Alexander Soros and the whole Soros network. And I don't know the names of all these Jews because I don't need to sit and think about that all the time. What I'm saying is that 82 years ago in Germany, in another country, some Jews were subjected to what I, in America, am being subjected to by the Democrat Party, sponsored by a wealthy Jew named George Soros. I think that that's ironic. And I think it's ironic that I'm being lectured about anti-Semitism as me in America I'm being terrorized by George Soros and his shock troops. But I'm being lectured to about anti-Semitism by people like this James Lankford and the Anti-Defamation League. Now, let's go to let me see if I can find what I sent to, my tweet that I sent to Mike Pompeo. Let's see if I can find that. What did I send to Mike Pompeo? Where's my tweets at? Here's my tweets. Okay, so Mike Pompeo. Oh, here's my other one to Senator Lankford. You just endorsed candidate Joe Biden, who led the burning and looting of American cities for the past several months. That's true. Where's my tweet? Okay, here we go. Jake Tapper, no. It's down here. What do we got? Pray for war. Fake news. Okay, we're getting close. Stick with me. I'm almost there. Who is this? Oh, that's Jim Acosta. I said, fuck you. That's still up there. That's good. Fox News. No. God, when did I send this, dude? It was this morning. Andy McCarthy. That was yesterday. Where's my tweet to Mike? Oh, here's another one, dude. Here's another guy. Robert, okay, I just bitched about the Jews, so now I'm going to bitch about Christianity, if you don't mind, okay? I just complained about the Jews, now I'm going to complain, and I complained, and in some earlier videos, I complained about the Catholics, and now I'm going to complain about Protestant Christianity, bunch of effing pussies, okay? Let me tell you. Here's this guy, Pastor Robert Jeffries, a friend of Trump, just urged Christians to accept a Biden presidency. So he's got the goofiest look on his face, this Jeffries guy. And so, that's the problem with some of these Christians is they're just like, they're so limp-wristed. Where did I get? I think we're getting close here. What is this? Oh, here we go. Mike Pompeo. It's got a picture of a synagogue burning. It says 82 years ago this week on Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. It was one night, just one night of broken glass. That's what I'm saying. One measly night, and the entire world, the U.S. empire, has to remind you of one night, just one night of broken glass. How many nights of broken glass have we been through in the past year? How much rioting and looting and murdering and mayhem and people being beaten, women being shot in the head for not saying Black Lives Matter. One night of broken glass, just one? Just one night? Just one little night of broken glass. Okay, so let me read this again. 82 years ago this week, on Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, Nazi leaders coordinated violent riots across Germany, destroying thousands of Jewish lives, businesses, and synagogues. We must remain vigilant in our fight against anti. That's the part. Now, if you would have said, and we're experiencing the same thing today in America at the hands of the Democrat Party, sponsored by George Soros and in league with the Pope and the Vatican and these Jesuits that I see like Martin guy on Twitter. Like if you would have like made that connection, like 82 years ago tonight, there was the Germans organized violence against Jews and they smashed their businesses and they burned down their synagogues, just like we're seeing happen today in America with the Democrat Party doing the same thing to you, an American. And it's sponsored by this guy, George Soros. So let's all fight back and defeat them. But he doesn't say that. Do you see why this is disturbing to me? Because instead he just says, I'll read it to you again. So what he says here is, 82 years ago this week, on Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, Nazi leaders coordinated violent riots across Germany, destroying thousands of Jewish lives, businesses, and synagogues. Here's the moral of the story. We must remain vigilant in our fight against anti-Semitism, so no such evil occurs again. Well, it's occurring right now. I mean, not tonight. I mean, it's pretty quiet tonight. But we've got businesses boarded up all over New York, and we've got businesses boarded up in D.C., and people have been murdered, people have been beaten. It's like, hello, why is it like this? Can someone tell me? Can someone tell me why we live under this insanity? And why is it Mike Pompeo is posting this, right? It's absurd, is what it is. It's absurd. It's absurd. I don't know a better word to describe the insanity of this. Am I the only one that saw all the rioting and looting and violence over the past year? But it wasn't just this year, because 4 years ago, Obama launched the same terrorism 4 years ago, and George Soros was part. I mean, do you remember the pallets of bricks they were shipping across the country? Does anyone remember that? Am I the only one that remembers that? Or are we just back on anti-Semitism again? Because my memory is pretty good, and I remember what happened this year. This year was a year of violence, of street violence, organized by the Democratic Party, sponsored by the Democratic Party, funded by the Democratic Party. And then Mike Pompeo makes this post about what's happening 82 years ago and doesn't make the connection that all this broken glass and violence and murder and mayhem is what we're experiencing right here in America, and it's not being directed at Jews. It's being directed at just any Americans. It's not specifically directed at Jews. It's being directed at any American who supports Donald Trump. Hold on, my cat wants to go outside. Can you hold on a second? Just stay right there. Hold on a second. Kitty, you obviously have a big emergency. Get out there. Get out of here. All right. So, am I making sense? Am I just a lunatic? Am I the only? I must be, because I'm the only one who sees how ridiculous this is. All right. So the night of broken glass. What was my response? So here's my response to Mike Pompeo. My response is, one night of broken glass? We have had months of riots, murders, beatings, and looting sponsored by Soros, who is Jewish, and nothing is done about it. Nothing is done about it. Do you see anything being done about George Soros? No, nothing effective is being done about it. They're trying to steal an election. Nothing is being done about it. Instead, we're being reminded about anti-Semitism almost 100 years ago, and no one's making the connection to the fact that Germans organized violence against Jews. That really happened, and that there's no connection between political violence then and like, well, we're experiencing the same type of political violence now at the hands of George Soros and the Democrat Party, which is at least half Jewish. It's half Jewish, it's half Catholic. And it's a little bit Muslim, too. The Republican Party is probably... Are there Protestants in the Democrat Party? I don't know. I guess there might be some. I would say it's run primarily by Catholics and Jews, the Democrat Party. They're atheist humanist Catholics and atheist humanist Jews that are also just, I guess, regular Jews. Are they real? Are they? There's no Orthodox. Are there Orthodox Jews in the Democrat Party? I don't know. I think it's Reformed Jews, which is basically like, I don't know, Reformed Jews. You can look that up and see what that is. I think it's Reformed Jews and Jesuit Catholics who are trained by Jesuits. Are there like believing Catholics in the Democrat Party? I don't know. I think they're more like atheist humanist Catholics. They're Catholics that worship, Satan. And then you have the Reformed Jews who, and together they run the Democrat Party. I would say that's the Democrat Party. The Republican Party is Protestants, people not really religious, believing Catholics, and Jews, Orthodox Jews, regular, what do you call it? What's not an Orthodox Jews? That would just be the ethnic Jews, people who are ethnically Jewish and not super religious. So I would say that those are the people that run the Republican Party. But there's no Muslims in the Republican Party, but there are Muslims in the Democrat Party. So they include Muslims and homos. There's a lot of homos and weird people with a lot of weird sexual perversions in the Democrat Party and in the Republican Party. So that's the breakdown. Now, did I tell you that 82 years ago, today or this week, some Germans were violently attacking Jews and attacking their businesses? They smashed their windows, and then they set fire to their synagogue, and they were violent towards them. And that's why you shouldn't think about how that relates to what's happening to you right now at the hands of the Democrat Party. But what you should do is fight anti-Semitism. You see, because that's what you should do. Don't worry about that you have Soros-sponsored mobs doing this to you, this whole year. But just remember that we should all fight anti-Semitism. God, that's so dumb. And I'm not saying, look, I'm critical of some Jews, right? Jewish organizations like the Anti-Defamation League. That I'm very critical. But here's the thing. I'm not a bigot. Like, I don't just hate people because they're Jewish. In fact, I know a lot of people that are Jewish that are really nice people, that are great people. Like, they're some of the nicest people I ever met were Jewish. Now, what do they think of, like, the thing, here's the thing about Jews. See, in spite of the fact that there was violence towards Jews in Germany, I thought that the Germans had a legitimate political position as far as wanting to be their own Germanic republic. See, when it comes to having a republic, right, you can have different types of republics. You can have a republic where everyone's the same race. You could have that. You'd still be a republic. And in Russia, you could have a republic where, you do what, it's like, you have what's called an Islamic Republic in Iran. Iran is called the Islamic Republic of Iran, right? So it's a republic, and it's an Islamic Republic. Well, you can have an Islamic Republic if you want. It's your country. Have an Islamic Republic. So in other words, they don't have a kingdom of Iran. There's no king. They had the Shah of Iran, who was a king, who was put in place by the United States and the CIA. And then they had a republic. So it's a republic. Iran is a republic. It's not there's not an aristocracy running Iran. It's a republic. So it's self-government to that degree. I mean, they don't have the same uh, system that we have here, but they have a republic, and it's an Islamic republic. And you can have an Islam like there's nothing that says you have to have a certain type of republic. Oh, you can't if there's nothing that says like our government tries to say you can't have a religious republic. Well, you can. You could have a Christian republic. You could have a Jewish republic. Israel's not a republic. I think they call it a democracy, and it's a parliamentary democracy. So they have a parliamentary democracy. I mean, Israel has a parliamentary democracy, and it's really modeled off the British system more than the U.S. It's like really modeled off the British. But of course, that was British territory, wasn't it? So here's the thing with Germany, right? So the Germans said, we're the Germans, we're a race. The Germans have been trying to expel invaders since, like the Roman times, when the Romans were going in there. When was that? It's before Christ. We're talking about like 100 BC or something. I don't know exactly when. The Romans were like trying to get into Germany. The Germans are like, no, go back, go away. Violently attacking the Romans. Was that anti-Romanism? Well, of course it was. They were the Germans were anti-Roman. They were killing the Romans because of their race. They were killing the Romans because of their race. They didn't want those Romans in there. Get out. And they would violently attack the Romans just for being Romans. Because they were Romans and they were in Germany. And the Germans were like, get the fuck out. We're going to kill you. And they would kill them. And the Romans kept going in and say, no, we want to live with you. We want to have diversity. And they're like, no, get your diversity out of here. So here's the thing. I'm not German. And I don't feel like I have any legitimate claim to tell the Germans how that they should run Germany. And that's the thing about some Jewish people at the time believed that they had a right to rule over Germany. A lot of these people were connected to the Rothschild network that was at that time, based out of England and New York. That whole network that had been set up and it had gone into New York. And so you had the New York Federal Reserve that was set up trying to colonize all the world, basically, but starting with Europe with World War I. Is there a cat meowing again? So they tried to colonize all the world. So in other words, the Germans since Roman times have been trying to expel invaders. My cat has to come in now. So just hold on a second. Just wait right there. So the Germans since Roman times have been trying to expel invaders, and they obviously failed because they had all these people living in Germany that weren't German. They didn't consider them German. Now, the Jews were probably mostly actually German. I mean, they were racially probably mostly German and maybe a little bit not German or something. Like, how German were they? Probably mostly German. But the problem is, they weren't identifying racially as German, even if they were mostly German. And that's something I've noticed about Jewish people. No matter what other race they actually probably predominantly are, they'll say that they're Jewish because they were raised Jewish in the religion. Even if they might not be, they might not even be Jewish at all. Like they might have zero Jewish blood. Or almost none, and they're like actually probably more German or more Celtic or some other thing, but they'll say they're Jewish because they were raised Jewish, and so it's actually their philosophy, but then they think it's their race, but it's not really. So it gets complicated. I think it gets complicated for them. But so when it comes to Jewish people, I don't have a problem with Jewish people. I have a problem with the only people I don't like in this world are people who are irresponsible. That's the only people. And people that hurt animals. And people that are bad parents, like people that abuse their children or do crystal meth and don't take care of their kids or become weird degenerates and don't handle their children. So I think those are the only people I really don't like. And that has nothing to do with any of this topic. But when it comes to politics, okay, politics is racial, and so you have the German race, and they want to live as German. So now, before the Romans conquered Germany and set up these kingdoms across Germany, well, what kind of government were they? Probably just kind of like a military clans. They were like clannish governments. But this whole imposition of these kingdoms came from the Romans, who were basically trying to recreate, the Sumerian system, this ancient Sumerian system. They were trying to recreate it in Rome, and then they set up all these kingdoms as this control mechanism to impose this religion, which was really very much rooted in Sumerian culture. And so the Germans probably always had this feeling of like, this is all alien to us. We're not the Sumerians, we're not the Jews. None of this has to do with our culture. When you read the Bible, there's some people that try to say that the white race are the ancient Israelites. Not really, because here's the thing. I've broken down who all the races were. When it comes to the Germanic people, like there's some of these Protestants who think, oh, the Germans were the Assyrians, because there's some words that were in the Assyrian language which are also in the German language, but I'll tell you why that is. It's not because the Germans were the Assyrians. It's because the Germans, as the Seleucids, right? Because the Germanic race has been known as other races at different times. And the Seleucids were a Germanic race that was Greek speaking. They were Greek people, but they were purely Germanic. I mean, if you look at the images of these Seleucids, these are the most Germanic looking people you'll ever see. Now, I almost said Aryan, but they actually weren't the Aryans, because at that time there were Aryans who were in the Middle East. They were Indo-European speaking people, but then the Western people of Europe were also Indo-Europe. It was also an Indo-European speaking language, but it was a slightly different dialect than the people in the East, and so they weren't really the Aryans, and they definitely weren't the Assyrians, although the Assyrians were the Aryans also. It was probably mixed race, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. The Seleucids were Germanic. They were absolutely Germanic looking. They invaded all of the Middle East with Alexander the Great. When Alexander the Great took over all of the known world at that time, which was the East, all of Egypt, Judea, Syria, Anatolia, Iraq, all the way across to India. That was all taken by the Germanic race, right? Under Alexander, these were Germanic people, right? That was racially, they were purely Germanic. When that happened, and then the dynasty split up into Ptolemaic and the Seleucids, that's when the Germans were basically occupying that whole territory of both Egypt, Judea, and Syria, that whole region there, all the way through Iran. This was all being occupied by the Germanic races, by Germanic race, Greek-speaking Germanic race. And this was, what year? We're talking, was this 300 BC? Around there, okay? Around between 400 and 300 BC, I think. So that was a while ago. And that's why, because the Seleucids ruled Assyria, what had previously been Assyria, they adopted some of the terminology which they brought back to Germany. And that's why some of these retards go back and they read it and say, the Germans were the Assyrians. Well, no, they weren't. They weren't the Assyrians, dude. That's just stupid. So anyway, long story short, there were some Germans that never left Germany. They stayed in the woods. They stayed in Europe. And the Romans, who were very much racially diverse, had mixed with the Assyrian and these Assyrian races and these kind of like Semitic races, which a lot of people don't understand what that means. When I say Semitic, I know what the word means, and it really only applies to the Amorites or the Akkadian race, which is that race that occupied the Fertile Crescent, but not the Sumerians. Not the Sumerians. Sumerian language is a language isolate. It is a language isolate. Sumerians were not Semites, but the Semites adopted Sumerian culture. And the story of the flood comes from the Sumerians. It doesn't come from the Semites because it's not a Semitic story originally. It was a Sumerian story. And the Sumerians were an advanced society at the time. This was all the Sumerians appeared in the Middle East after supposedly after the flood by ship. They arrived on the shores of Iraq down there at the bottom of the Gulf down there at Mesopotamia. Apparently, this appears how it has happened, is that they arrived there in this marshy land where the two rivers flow into the sea by a ship and restarted civilization there and had a civilization going. It's a language isolate. It's not related to any of the other languages. It's not related to the Semitic languages. It's not related to the languages in India or Iran or anywhere around there. It's not related to any other languages. It's a language isolate. Now, as they progressed up those two rivers, they encountered eventually these Akkadian races, who are the Amorites, we know them as, who were actually quite barbaric people, and they brought them civilization. So they brought civilization, which then spread through the Fertile Crescent and into Judea, and also down into Egypt, which I believe those pyramids are much older than people believe. They're probably maybe millions of years old, who knows. But when civilization collapsed, you had whatever people created that stuff that collapsed with everything else. So it's kind of like a global reset is what it was. And that's why it started again in Samaria. Anyway, long story short, the Germans were up there and they were trying to keep people out. The idea of Germany was keep others out. Don't let them in. Go away. Now that's fine. I don't have to rule over Germany. I would like to visit Germany. I think the Germans are great. I just don't feel compelled to live there and order them around. In other words, Germany is great. Germany is German. Germany is Germany because it's Germans. You can't bring another race of people into Germany and perpetuate the German culture. It has to replicate itself. That's fine with me. It doesn't. Go ahead. It doesn't bother me. So I understand that the German mind is like, hey, we're Germans. If you're not Germans, you can't rule over us, right? This is what they've always said. And it makes sense. There's nothing about that I disagree with. So if you're Jewish and you think, well, we have a right to live in Germany and we have a right to rule over Germany, I would say, no, I mean, you don't. It's like neither, and I don't. I'm not German. I don't believe I have a right to do that. I just don't think so. I think you have to accept that other people rule their territories, unless you're going to go in for unless you're going to go for conquest. And then if you're going for conquest, you got to use force, right? So then you're agreeing to a contest of force, and in that scenario, your enemy is going to use force against you, and then you can't cry about it and call it anti-Semitism. If you're saying, no, the Germans don't have a right because we're conquering them, we're going to use force against them. We're going to force our will upon them through violence, which is what they did through the banking system. They used violence. They use terrorism. They use violence. They use all kind of political machinations. So you can't do that and then when your enemy, who you're trying to conquer, fights you back, claim that they're racists. I mean, you can, but I mean that's just a little. Obviously, that's a trick. It's kind of like when the white race conquered the Indians here, the Native Americans. Because you could say, well, this land belonged to the Native Americans, which is a lot of currently is a lot of Chinese and UN propaganda to get rid of America, and that's what they say. But it's true that there were Native American tribes living here in North America, right? So now the white race came over and they conquered these other people through force, through violence. Now so if you're going to do that. When the Native Americans kill one of your guys, you can't go, "You're a racist! You're a racist! How dare you! You're just anti, whatever, who was it, the English or the Scots or whoever the race of it was at the time." You can, I guess, but it's just, it's hypocritical and it's stupid. But some people go, well, we're just going to be hypocritical because we're going to weaponize the language. We're going to weaponize, this. It's kind of like a mind weapon, right? As you're attacking the Cherokees, and then they attack you back, and you're like, oh my God, you racist! You just attacked me. You're just an anti blah de blah. That seems to be what they're doing, in my opinion. So, if you want to engage in conquest, that's your business. But then don't come crying to me and say that, someone's being racist towards you. The Germans were in Germany when all this happened, so it was their land that they were on. And, you got to kind of... Here's the way it works, in my opinion. If you're in someone else's land, right, so another race controls an area, you have two options. You either submit to their laws... and you agree to how they want things done, or or if you can't do that, you can either leave, or if you want to conquer them, then you can try and conquer them by force, which is violence. And if you do that, then you're asking also, you're agreeing to violence, which entails violence can be used against you, right? If you're saying I have a right to your stuff, I'm going to take your stuff through force, then don't be surprised when force is used against you. It's up to you. You can do that. I'm not going to say you can't. People have been doing that for thousands of years. Just don't come crying to me about it, I guess is what my point is. If that happens to you, don't cry to me and say, "Woohoo, you're racist," because you attacked me. It's like, well, what were you doing, dude? Were you doing anything? All right, I think you get the picture. The moral of the story is, what I'm trying to say, I'm not glad that Jews were attacked on Kristallnacht. I think that's terrible. I like Jews and I like Germans. I like both of them. I like everybody. I'm for everyone. And so I don't want to see anyone harmed. But, there are natural laws in this universe. A lot of it has to do with self-defense. A lot of it has to do with forming into groups and clans, and that's always going to be the case. And so what I guess I'm saying is don't be a hypocrite, and don't come to me after burning down American cities and tell me about this one night when it happened to Jews 82 years ago, and that this is why we all need to fight anti-Semitism. Right now, I'm a little more worried about my own survival, okay? I guess that's the point. You're telling me about anti-Semitism, and I'm here worried about, is America going to, what's happening in America? We've got cities burning, we've got rioting, we've got looting, we've got Maoist checkpoints. We've got people walking around in masks. We've got Fauci and all these Jesuits running everything and setting up this fascist totalitarian system. And you're telling me about anti-Semitism? This is so not my concern right now, okay? I'm not concerned about that. And I think it's strange that I'm being lectured about it by officials in the government while all this weird stuff is going on. But it's almost like they don't notice it. It's like, oh, there's cities burning in America, but let's talk about this thing that happened 82 years ago in Germany. You get the picture? That's my concern. Okay, thanks for listening to all my concerns.